options that there are now.
Great, great. Now, I have a question about in terms of the children as guests at the reception. Should they be allowed to attend the wedding or reception? And, what are sort of the rules of thumb around that? Some folks have alcohol at their reception, and that introduces an issue. So what are some rules of thumb with regard to decision-making around that?
As far as children goes, my advice is if you are not going to allow children, then you have to stick that across the board. The only really exception could be if you have a flower girl or a ring bearer, and you want them to come to the reception for a little bit, then that's fine since they're in the bridal party. But if you start making exceptions for other people aside from those children who are in the bridal party, you're going to get into it's a really gray area, and it's just easier to be cut and dry and just say, you know what, no children are allowed, adults only, and that just makes it fair because it is a different environment if there are children around. So if the bride and groom do not want children, then they need to be very clear about that, and they need to let it be known so that that their guests can make the proper or necessary arrangements, especially if they have to travel, and figure out what they can do with their children so they can attend the wedding. Now, what some bride and grooms do is that they do provide or hire, depending on, they kind of do like a poll, and okay, well, who is going to be traveling with children, or who will need some babysitters or some assistance, and the bride and groom will then take care of, getting a room or two, either at a hotel, which is the main hotel where all the guests are staying, or maybe at the venue itself, and there'll be a side room or something that's far away from the reception site, and they'll take care of making sure that there are babysitters and enough babysitters for the number of children that they have, and making sure the children are fed. There's videotapes or books and toys to play with. They'll sometimes do that. Now, if the bride and groom decide they want it to be a kid-friendly wedding and people are allowed to bring their children, then there's two options. One is to have the children be part of the ceremony and the reception the entire time. And they can sit in the same dining room with the rest of the bridal party and the rest of the guests, and they can either sit with their parents or they can have a children's table. And typically people do that. You also provide, depending on the age of the children, crayons, maybe a coloring book, things to entertain the children, since it's obviously geared more towards adults as far as the reception goes. Or another option would be is to, again, rent another room and kind of have a big party room, and also serve all the children meals, and that way the children can kind of come and go as they please, and come out and dance to the dance floor in the reception if they want. But then they also have their own room, and maybe they'll be entertaining themselves, being in a room with a bunch of other children their own age. So those are the two different options. But again, make it very clear if you're going to have children, that's great. Let that be known. If not, definitely communicate that the children are not invited and not welcome at the reception. And obviously phrase it in a very friendly, politically correct way. But just say that it's a late reception, or we just no children are going to be allowed at this time. And that's totally, either way is completely appropriate. So, and as far as the alcohol at weddings, again, it's up to the bride and groom what they want to do. It's more receptions do have alcohol. Now, doesn't mean you have to have a full bar. You can just have beer and wine. You can have wine, and then some people just have champagne, and then some people have liquor and martini bars. And another trend is making these custom drinks that kind of go with the theme of the wedding. For the circus wedding, it was a cotton candy martini. So you can do whatever you want. It really depends. Again, it depends on the theme of the wedding and what the bride and groom wants in this wedding. But it's not. It is definitely acceptable to have to be a dry wedding.
Great. Once again, we have Catherine Porterfield discussing wedding planning, and we're discussing etiquette. And my next question would be with regard to the registry. Is it too forward, or is it commonplace to include gift registry information in the shower invitations for the bride?
Nowadays, more people are incorporating that on there because since the shower is being thrown by either a friend or family member of the bride and groom, so it makes it a little bit more acceptable for them to announce that where the couple is registered. It's not the bride and groom coming out and saying, this is where we're registered for gifts. Please bring us something. So it is acceptable. I think what I prefer personally is that now there are all these personalized websites, and you can have it's a wedding website, and the bride and groom can set it up, and then now it's so easy for people to go to, and it gives travel directions, and it gives lodging information, it gives the time of the wedding, any kind of event details, and then some obviously go into more information about whether, how the couple met, and photos, and things like that, and list the bridal party. But I think what the best thing to do as far as with the registry is that on there, the registry can be listed. You can go, there's usually links that take you directly to the different registries at the different stores. And then what you can do is on these invitations and just say, for more information about, John and Barbara's wedding, please visit their website and have a link to the website. I think that's a little bit more tactful. It's just to have, because it's not just saying go check out the registry. It's saying here's more information about the event, and there everyone can get the information that they need. I think that is with how things are in this day and age, and with the internet being just commonplace. I think it's the best way and most tactful way to get that information out there.
Great. Now, for the wedding party, at the ceremony itself, some people might consider it a little tacky to have two best men and two matrons or maids of honor. How do you feel about that?
I think what's important, and again, now that these weddings are so personalized, you can kind of do what you want. I think the biggest thing is it's fine if you want to have two best men or two, matrons of honor or a matron of honor and a maid of honor. It's more important to have two than to cause some kind of rift in your family or your friends. But I would say that if the groom is going to have two, then the bride should have two. To kind of try to match that on both sides, just so it makes everything more equal.
Great. Now we're going to talk about footing the bill for a little bit here. This comes up all the time. Are there rules of thumb at all for who's going to pay for the rehearsal dinner, who gets the wedding, who gets the honeymoon, those types of things?
Traditionally, it has been that the groom's family pays for the rehearsal dinner, and then the bride's family pays for the wedding ceremony and reception. And then the honeymoon's kind of gone both ways. It can be either that it's a kind of a gift, and money goes towards it as a gift from both the groom's parents and the bride's parents. Nowadays, that's all kind of just like blown out of the water. It is really, a lot of times couples are paying for the weddings themselves because they feel bad asking their parents for money. And so then maybe one parent, if they're paying for themselves, the one family, the groom's family will do the rehearsal dinner, and the bride's family will then pay for the honeymoon. Sometimes it just varies depending on your financial situation and how the families interact and how close they are and things like that. Sometimes both the groom's family and the bride's family will pay for the wedding. They'll split it 50-50, and they'll pay for the rehearsal dinner 50-50, and same for the honeymoon. And sometimes it'll be that the bride and groom say, okay, you guys can split the overall cost of the wedding weekend, but we'll pay for the honeymoon ourselves. And sometimes all three are paying, the bride's family, the groom's family, and the bride and groom themselves. It really just depends. What's important, I think, though, is that making sure that the bride and groom acknowledge those who have paid for that particular event. For example, if the groom's family does pay for the rehearsal dinner, make sure when you get up and you give your toast in the beginning and you're saying thank you, make sure you thank them. That's not both of our families, but thank them for that. And the next day, if the bride's family does pay for the wedding, thank the bride. Again, revisit the rehearsal dinner so that everyone who was not invited to the rehearsal dinner hears, Mr. So-and-so, thank you for planning last night and for hosting that last night. And today, thank you, to the bride's family for this wonderful event. The two events together have made for such a wonderful, special weekend. Making sure that they're being recognized and thanked, because it really is, aside from the financial contribution, the responsibility, it's a big deal, and they want to make it special for the bride and groom to make sure that they're recognized and thanked publicly.
And do you think that the same applies with regard to out-of-town guests and destination weddings? We find that happens a lot, and sometimes people might say that the bride and the groom should fit the bill for those who are coming in from out of town, or if they're having something, abroad, they should cover costs. Is there a rule of thumb around that as well?
I don't think that there really is. I think what the rule is that the bride and groom are not expected to pay for everyone, but they do expect that not everyone will be able to afford to come. So they know that their numbers may not be so high. And for those who do foot the bill and do come, really making sure that they're well taken care of. I mean, that's the kind of thing where if it is a destination wedding, you definitely need to make sure that I think it's important to have, gift baskets at the different, hotels or wherever they're staying for the out-of-town guests. Just have water, some snacks, things like that, maps of ways to get around, some kind of highlights of the area where they are, things to check out and see, a personalized note from the bride and groom, potentially their families, thanking them for coming and for taking the time and the effort to being there for their special weekend. And just really, again, making sure that each guest feels valued and that they are clearly showing how much they appreciate the guest being there and all the length and effort they want you to be there with them for their special day. As far as rehearsal dinner goes, for a destination wedding, basically everyone who's traveled should be invited to the rehearsal dinner. Or typically, if it's a hometown wedding, you just do the bridal party and some family members, people who really kind of need to be there, and you try to keep it as small as possible. For a destination wedding, it's pretty much the same people who are going to be at the wedding the next day, at the party before, at the rehearsal dinner. Make sure they're invited because they need to be taken care of that entire weekend. Right. And make sure the travel plans are also included, that you have shuttles or you have whatever it needs they need to get from wherever they're staying to the ceremony and reception. Make sure that you've got accommodation and travel plans taking care of that for them.
Great. Now, if there is one, what would you say is the number one wedding etiquette rule that is absolutely most important?
Number one, honestly, it's don't be late to the ceremony. It's a lot of people who come in late, and it's that and the cell phones. I know those sound like two small little things, but it really makes the ceremony is a very special moment. And to kind of come in late, and most places, in order to get into the room where the ceremony is, they've got these heavy doors. There's really no quiet way to make your entrance. So, and when the ceremony is taking place, doors are closed. You have to open them, and it's noticed. So if you're running really late, then at that point my advice is just skip the ceremony and go to the reception, because otherwise you're going to make too much of an entrance. And then the cell phone, a lot of officiants will now say, please, make sure to turn off your cell phones so it doesn't ring in the middle. But a lot of people still forget to do it, and that's, just very, very tacky, and it's a very common thing, but it really does. People are mortified when their phones go off, and then usually, especially if it's a family member or something, then everyone gives them a hard time, and it's just don't bring your phone or just turn it off. Yeah, it's the latest, the latest trend in 2006. So, technology. Yeah, definitely.
So let's talk catering. Let's talk about some food. What are some of your tips or facts that you can offer with regard to, finding a good caterer? A lot of folks have to deal with picky guests, with deciding what to serve. What's some general advice you can offer with regard to the catering selection?
General advice I have to offer, I would say first off, in picking a caterer, catering can make or break your wedding, 100%, because they are the ones who are responsible for the setup, for the breakdown. They're the ones who, this actually goes into another kind of etiquette from the planning side. One of the biggest problems that can happen is that if the caterer, for example, they're responsible for setting up the tables. If they don't set up enough chairs at a table, that's a huge, huge problem, and it is such an awkward situation for guests to show up and they don't have a seat. And so you either have to, rush another place setting, another chair, or sometimes they have to wheel in a whole other table. That it looks horrible. So, again, making sure that you pick a caterer who really is, you want to pick someone who's done plenty of weddings, because, again, they can make or break your ceremony and your reception. So make sure they know what they're doing, constant communication with them, once you pick them is also very, very key. But to go back, to get ahead of myself, to go back to picking a caterer, I also feel like caterers should basically, jump through hoops to get the particular clients they have, as a wedding coordinator should, and really be there and do whatever the bride and groom want. Obviously, give advice. The bride and groom wants something that's not appropriate or not feasible. Be able to advise them and give them the best kind of solutions or alternate methods of getting what they want. But they really just need to be accommodating and trustworthy, and again, up front, get some referrals, look at pictures, look at sample menus, see the number of weddings they've done, specifically the number of weddings they've done within the guest range that you're going to have for your wedding, and then again, call those references and just kind of do as much research as you can before actually hiring the caterer. Also look and see how willing they are to be flexible with your schedule, as far as if you do have many people who have specific diets, and how they're able to accommodate that, and what they're able to do, what solutions they're able to offer, and see also what they're able to do about if you want something specific, or again, like I mentioned, there are these now themed drinks. Are they able to do these themed drinks? Are they able to, do something creative and fun that goes along with the theme that you have in your head for your wedding, and just make sure that they're able to meet all the needs that you have. And I also think it's important to definitely taste the food. I say interview, anywhere from like 6 to 8 caterers, and then from there go to a tasting with probably 2 or 3, and then base your choice on that. So food is obviously extremely important. Make sure you like the food, and also just make sure, again, that they're able to meet all the needs that you have for what you want for your specific wedding.
Okay, let's talk about the wedding cake itself. How do you decide what kind of cake is best? From taste, what size, what design? Are some more popular than others?
I think some definitely are more popular than others. The ones I basically have just dealt with, honestly, are either very simple cakes that are just, they're tiered, but they don't actually have the tiers with them. So they're layered cake, circles, pretty simple. Usually, 3 different layers to it. And then, or there's really actually a huge trend in these kind of abstract, like Alice in Wonderland looking cakes that are almost like they're lopsided. One's like a lopsided square, and then you've kind of got like a circle, and then you've got, like a little kind of sphere at the top. So, and each one's got a different pattern on it. So 2 completely different styles, but they've both become really, really popular. And with as far as the tasting goes, obviously do that when you are picking out your cake, and you can basically, if you've got different layers, you can have different you can have a chocolate layer, or you can have just basic vanilla or almond flavored, or then you have the kinds with the different creams in them, and most large bakeries can pretty much make whatever kind you want. If you want a carrot cake, and then you want the German chocolate layer, that's totally acceptable. They can do that. Some smaller cake shops only have like 5 or 6 to choose from, and you can pick that out, and you're limited in choice, but typically the cost is less if it's a smaller shop. However, I do think obviously tasting is the most important, and obviously looking at plenty of pictures and seeing what their work is like and what they've done. And normally when you go to the cake shop, they actually should have some sample cakes out for you to see that they have done in the past, or that they're going to be using for an upcoming wedding or something. So that way you can see it in person. And one of my biggest kind of little secrets, I guess, would be that if the bride and groom, if they don't want to spend a lot of money on the cake, one thing you can do, and this can save them some money, would be to find out what the minimum size cake is that you can order. Typically, because if you want one just to cut, so you can kind of do that tradition, that's fine. And then normally the smallest, I'd say, is about a 25 to 35 person cake. You can get that whatever design you want, and then when you pick the flavor cake you want, just have the bakery make a sheet cake of that flavor in the back, so that when the caterer serves it, no one will ever know that it didn't come from this one on display, but you're saving some money that way. So that's kind of one little trick of the trade that you learn. So you kind of can cut some corners that way.
Yeah. Yeah. What about just going all out on your own and making your own cake? Are there pros or cons associated with that?
If you really want to, if you're a chef or some kind of baker or pastry chef, that's great. But I just think wedding. Obviously, you're doing that the day before your wedding. Your mind is not does not want to worry about making your wedding cake, and the stress of that is, in my opinion, the day before your wedding. So generally, I think it's not a good idea. But if someone has their heart set on it and they're willing to handle it, then that's fine. But typically, I've never encountered that, and I do not recommend it. I think it would just be way too stressful.
Wow.
Because it's hard. And then if it doesn't work out, you're going to be getting the cake from the local grocery store, and you don't really have a backup.
Let's talk about the groom's cake. Some folks have never even heard of this phenomenon or part of the day. What is it? When is it presented? How did this whole thing start? And is it necessary?
Not necessary, and it was really popular, I'd say, about probably 50 years ago, and then now it's really becoming popular again. And what seems to be popular is it's a very personalized cake. For example, I did a wedding where the groom loved chocolate chip cookies, so his cake looked like a big chocolate chip cookie. The other one the bride and groom had a cat that kind of everyone, it was part of the family, and everyone, all the friends and family knew this cat, so his shape was the shape of this cat. Another wedding I did, the groom was a sculptor, so they put one of his he did trees, sculpted these beautiful kind of trees, and he would put that in the middle of his cake, and he made his cake. It was a tiramisu cake, and that was his favorite kind of dessert. So again, these very personalized bachelor or groom's cakes, they're a huge trend, and they're definitely coming back. And typically how they are presented, they can either be for most places, they're just out on display the whole time. They're maybe on the opposite room for where the wedding cake is, but they're just out for everyone to see. There's no presentation, and they don't even really serve the cake. It's typically just cut, and then after the bride and groom have cut their wedding cake, then the groom's cake is just cut and kind of placed on the table, and if someone wants a slice or a piece of that cake, they just go get it themselves. It's not served from table to table. But again, it's a huge trend that's coming back.
Great. Now let's talk flowers.
Okay.
To a happy place. What flowers should you use, and what are some that you should never use? Any flower is acceptable. However, obviously, it kind of goes by seasons of what's in style, what's in bloom, what's not. And you can definitely do seasonal flowers. There are some, like someone would say, carnations are totally, they're not appropriate. They're not allowed, but you know what? They're making a comeback too. So sometimes they are included. It really just, again, depends on the theme of the wedding. My rule of flowers is if someone is really particular about your flowers obviously go with your color scheme. So what you do is the bride and groom kind of will pick, if they are more into what the bridesmaids are going to wear and the color of the linens and things like that, make those decisions first, then go to your flowers. If you're very into your flowers and what you want your centerpieces to look like and what you want your bouquets to look like, pick your flowers and then pick your everything else to go around that. So you kind of just have to see what's more important to you, weigh that, and then whatever your decision is, either pick your flowers first or pick your flowers based on your linens and your bridesmaids' dresses and your overall color theme. And flowers, again, a lot of times, in the summer it's a hydrangea, in the winter, it's kind of harder to get hydrangeas. You can use white ones, but it's a little bit more difficult to get those. So, and your colors definitely kind of also go with the season that it is. Fall, typically a little bit more. You've got these oranges and browns and reds and greens. In the winter, definitely a lot of red and white and green, or some blues in there. And then spring is pastels, and then summer's bright colors, yellows, purples, things like that. Doesn't mean that has to be the case, but that's typically how it is done. Great. Now, the centerpieces. What are some examples of creative ideas of floral centerpieces that have worked for you or that you've seen? Do they have to match the bouquets, or what are some tips for the centerpiece?
Definitely do not have to match the bouquets in the same color, kind of family, but they can be different flowers. They could be, they can be, completely different flowers, but even just one of the same colors. Just make sure that it's somehow linked to the bridesmaids and to their dresses and the bouquets they held. But as long as there's one connecting color, so that you can kind of see how they all go together in some small way, that's all that's necessary. And different things to do would be, to have some tables have, some tables can have like big topiaries, which are these, or large vases. So you've got these really tall, kind of like free-flowing type of centerpieces, and then have other tables have very short, small ones. That kind of gives the room height, and it also kind of gives different kind of texture to the entire room, because you're able to kind of just do different things, and it kind of pops all over, but it's not overwhelming. You don't have all these huge, vases and centerpieces on every single table, so it's a nice balance. Another thing to do would be incorporate fruit. That's kind of another big trend. So you kind of have this, makes the flower pieces come a little bit more alive. A lot of lemons are popular, or limes, or apples, kind of depending on what your theme is and the color of your flowers. So that's something else you can be creative with. Sometimes people put pictures in with the flowers. So that, like little, one picture will be coming out, or they'll have kind of frames around the centerpieces, and then just small flowers. And that way, again, it's making the table really personalized, and kind of, in that way you don't have to use as many flowers, because flowers is definitely also a big part of the budget, depending on what you do. And centerpieces are really, really, it can add up. So find different ways, and obviously if you use more fruits and things like that, then that also takes away from the number of flowers that you're buying. So that's another, I think, why it's an increasing trend.
Right. Now, for the cake and the flowers and the centerpieces, do you get to keep them? Should they be kept? What are some tips for saving all of these things?
For the flowers, typically what happens is for the centerpieces, well, I guess I'll start with the bouquets. The bride typically wants to keep her bouquet. The best thing to do is hang it upside down the day after, or starting that night, and just see, depending on what's in your bouquet. Tulips usually don't keep, but roses will keep. They'll dry very beautifully. Hydrangeas will dry very, very beautifully. Typically the greens and the flowers in the bouquets will. And then the ones that just don't keep, just kind of pull those out. It usually takes about a week for the flowers to dry, but just leave them hanging upside down. The bridesmaids, typically what happens is that with their bouquets, they either put on a table when they get to the reception around the guest book, or around the cake itself, because the flowers will kind of match the flowers on the cake, if there are flowers on the cake. At the end of the night, the bridesmaids can definitely take their bouquets back and do whatever they want with them. If they want to keep them, again, it's hanging them upside down. For the centerpieces, it would be, most families, they will either, they'll either, if the bride and groom gets married at a church, they will donate the flowers to the church to use for that weekend, or for that Sunday, or just for wherever, or sometimes they will donate it to a local hospital, or they will donate it to a hospice, things like that. Or they will also let, at the end of the night, whoever's still around, they'll tell everyone, please take home, a bouquet to remind you of the wedding, and please enjoy it at your house. That usually lasts, a little less than a week. So that's what happens, or it gets left at the reception site. So it kind of just depends on. Usually people do not take the centerpieces unless the family asks them to. So if you want your guests to take the centerpieces home with you, definitely make sure that you announce that. Another thing that can be done is if you're having a brunch the next day, take the flowers to the brunch and use them again there, because they'll still look beautiful the next day. So that's another thing, especially if the brunch is at a family house or something like that. You can definitely just reuse those flowers. With the cake, the caterer will typically ask the bride and groom if they want to keep the top of the cake, which is done so you can eat on your 1-year anniversary, and it's frozen for a year. And what the caterer will do then is take the top of the cake, that night, put it in the refrigerator or the freezer at the venue, and then the bride and groom should get it or give it to the wedding coordinator at the end of the night to store, and then the coordinator gets it, give it to the bride and groom, the next day or when they get back from their honeymoon, or the bride and groom will take it with them that night and immediately freeze it, and then you open it on and get to eat it on your 1-year anniversary.
Now, with regard to gifts, you mentioned untraditional gifts earlier, like donations, and we find that couples are registering for, honeymoons and cash towards down payments, for example. Is this trend becoming more popular? Is it okay?
I think it's definitely okay, and it is definitely popular. A lot of times, you can, you mentioned the honeymoons. People can give money for honeymoons. They can be even more specific than that. They can give them a free meal at some restaurant in Australia where the bride and groom are going to be. So it can really be, people like doing that when the bride and groom are there eating, they'll think the guest that gave them that gift, and it's giving them, a special meal on their honeymoon. Another thing people will do would be, typically you have a year to give a gift after a wedding. And so what some people will do is if they don't want to, go to the traditional registry, they'll try to do something a little bit more personalized and different, knowing that the couple loves, French cuisine or something. They will go and give they'll give a gift certificate to a French restaurant and maybe give a bottle of wine with the gift certificate. And if this has been several months or almost a year, if you're getting close to that 1-year anniversary and that 1-year deadline to get your gift in, you can do that and say, go enjoy your 1-year anniversary on me. Here's my gift to you. I want to give you something a little bit different. At this point, you're probably sick of getting another China setting or place setting or whatever. So it's a lot of, again, the personalized gifts are becoming really, really popular. At the other end of the spectrum, gift cards are huge. People would rather just give, it's not cash, but it's a gift card to a particular store, and, that way the guest isn't trying to, figure out what, if the registry is all full and there's nothing left, but, there's a couple of random spatulas and garlic presses, then they can just give a gift certificate, and if the bride and groom want to spend their money on, the few remaining items that don't really kind of go together as one gift, they can do that, or they can save it and buy furniture or something bigger for themselves. So that's a less personalized gift, obviously, but it's at the other end of the spectrum from the very personalized gift, but it also is very practical and it's easy for everyone.
Now, bachelorette parties, showers. Describe the original purpose and history, and how have these things changed over time? And are there any common themes that you've noticed that you're finding as you plan them or hear about?
They were originally created, obviously, to kind of give the bride and groom each one more night or day or to celebrate their singlehood and entering into married union. But it typically it's now. I mean, I find again it's another weekend. A lot of kind of weekend events where the guys and girls will both go away for a weekend, whether it's to the beach, whether it's to Vegas, whether it's to a NASCAR race, fishing, New York, kind of anything. Whatever the bride and groom each want to do, then their friends plan for it. It's typically planned, I would say, by the maid of honor, matron of honor, or the best man. Sometimes if there's a brother or sister, they will plan the bachelor or bachelorette party, just depending. Now, what exactly it is, it could, again, like I said, it can be going fishing. It can be, could be going to, a men's lounge. It could be doing anything. And with women, it is also, again, anything. Sometimes it's going out, at night to a nice dinner and then going out to some bars or going out dancing. There's also this huge spa trend where everyone goes out and they, get manicures and pedicures and facials and massages and do that for a day and have some tea, very, very relaxing. Also going to the beach for a weekend, getting a bunch of girls together and making it like a 3-day event and just enjoying your time on the beach and, in each other's company, and each day can have maybe a different, planned event. So it really, they're not as simple as they used to be. It's not just, going out to dinner anymore. It's definitely bigger. I think bigger is better is kind of the general rule now.
Great. Now, total cost. What are some of the current stats on the average national cost of weddings? A lot of people gasp when they just think of the mere thought of wedding planning because of the price. So what are the stats looking like these days?
It's hard on a national level, I would say, just because it is, the wedding that I planned in Cape Cod the cost is completely different than what I'm used to in D.C. So it really just depends on the location. I would say for most kind of like an area like Washington, D.C., you're going to have a wedding of 100 people, and it's going to be with a meal, and it's going to have alcohol. It's going to be hard to have that for under $20,000, I would say. It's just, typically for 100 people with catering and drinks, that catering bill alone is going to be about $10,000. So that's not even factoring into flowers and rental facilities and, paying that rental fee and photographers and cakes and flowers. It's really, and music, it just all adds up. So I would say $20,000 to $25,000, it's really hard to do. If you're going to have a wedding of that size, it's hard to do anything for under that.
Right. Any tips for keeping costs down?
There are definitely tips. So the cake tip that I gave earlier, getting the smallest one made, and then doing, a sheet cake in the back, seeing if that would make a difference. Another thing with centerpieces, there are many ways to cut corners. Don't go, no one's looking at the actual, vase, or they sometimes have these small silver-looking containers. They don't have to be real silver. No one's looking at them. The flowers can hang over it. No one will ever know. A lot of times if you put a mirror underneath that, it kind of makes the flower arrangement seem to be even bigger, so you can make it smaller, and you're saving money on that. There are plenty of ways. The gifts that people used to give at every wedding to their guests, no one really uses those, and it's a lot of money that just really doesn't need to be spent. If you want to do anything, you can say a gift, donation was made in your name on behalf of the bride and groom to such and such a charity, and you can put a little card on each table for that. And that is, it's a very thoughtful thing to do, and it's less expensive. There's a huge trend a while ago for everyone to give or have disposable cameras on their tables, and nowadays, just everything being digital, those cameras, no one really uses it. Half the time, you're going to get out of maybe 30 cameras that you buy, maybe enough, like maybe 30 or 36 good photos. But the rest, and that's why you hired a photographer. It's a waste of money. It's a cute idea, but it's really, I find, just not worth it. There are definitely ways to kind of cut corners. And with each vendor, you can do that as well. With your photographer, with the package that you get, with your cake, with your florist. There are always different ways. So make sure you just, as a wedding planner, you talk to your bride and groom about what they want, and then be able to communicate that with your vendor, and with the, just do some research and find ways that you can, cut these little corners and kind of bring the cost of the overall wedding down.
Great. I was just thinking, just today I got an email from one of my girlfriends who just returned from having her wedding abroad, and I wrote her this email about how did it go, sorry I couldn't make it, tell me about it. And the first thing that she said to me in her email was, we had a great time. And that really struck me as, that's really what it's all about, is enjoying yourself. It's one of the most important days of your life, and it's very important to make sure that you enjoy yourself, you have fun, and that it's memorable. So what can brides and grooms do to ensure that they will enjoy their wedding day and avoid stress and prevent disasters, so they can look back at it and say, it's a good time?
I honestly do think that hiring a wedding planner is a huge help. It's just to help them be able to, you want to have one person that you can kind of you don't have to worry about being necessarily being polite to, or offending them, or hurting their feelings. And, with family members, it's an important day for them too, and you want them to be able to have fun. So having a wedding planner is just someone that, it's a professional relationship, and, you can just be very direct, and I think that's really helpful. And if you're stressing, the bride or groom, they can just, say, please, can you help me do this? And you're not taking the wedding planner away from enjoying the reception. They're not a guest. They're working it. So I think that's one thing. And another thing as a wedding planner, which I always try to do, is I always try to make sure that the bride and groom have some food in the waiting areas before the ceremony, So they each have a little something just to make sure there's some food in their stomach, and they have some water if they want some champagne or wine or beer, just something to kind of help calm them down. And then I think it's also really important for after the wedding to make sure that the bride and groom get 10 minutes. You know, the day goes by so fast, and they're talking to so many people, they never really get to focus on what just happened, and that, you know, they just committed their lives to each other. So to have a room or place to go where they can be alone for 10 minutes, no photographers, you know, nobody, just set up a room for them where there are some hors d'oeuvres they can actually eat, because most of the time, you know, bride and groom do not get to eat at the reception because they're running around talking to people. So they can have a glass of champagne and something to eat and just spend 10 minutes alone with each other and just to kind of relax and prepare themselves for talking and dancing and being around all night and just being able to focus on what they just did. I think that 10 minutes, that's all it takes. This is really a great time for them to really put the day and or night or the overall experience in perspective.
Now, the profession itself, I want to become a wedding consultant. How do I do that?
I think the best thing to do is to really just make sure, do your research, know your stuff, and, you know, make sure you know what's involved and what's entailed. And I think the best thing to do is to start out as just doing, if you have a friend or if you have someone you know who's getting married, and say, look, you know, this is an area I want to get involved in. Can I please kind of tag along with you and watch? You don't want to start off at the beginning being responsible for a wedding your very first time, as your first experience. You want to maybe kind of follow someone around. If you don't have a friend who's getting married, maybe go and ask and try to do some kind of internship through a wedding firm, or just say, you know, I'd like to volunteer my services. I know it sounds kind of crazy to say you're going to give up so much of your time, but it is kind of like an apprenticeship, and really just try to follow someone around so that you can then learn what it's like to deal with all these vendors and everything like that. And then I think in the beginning it's a little bit easier to kind of just do the day of wedding planning, because like I said, you're not responsible for all these big decisions. You're just responsible for, you know, making sure things are delivered when they're supposed to. So you can't really be held accountable for kind of everything, but just, you know, making sure that things, just that day of, making sure things are delivered and that the bride and groom's plans have been executed as they wanted it to be, but you don't have kind of ultimate control. So it's kind of a nice way to kind of get your feet wet. And then from there, as you feel more comfortable, then start taking on full clients. But when you're ready to be at that point, you should have business cards, you should have your company registered, everything like that, be as professional as possible, so that, you know, when you, again, like I said, it all comes back to trust. And if you are, you know, if you have business cards and it shows that you've made this effort into this business venture for yourself, then they'll trust that you're going to do well, because, you know, the bride and groom will know that you've committed to this, and that this is your goal now and your career goal, and it's something that you want to do. So make sure when you're ready to run on your own that you are ready, and both professionally, and that you have the experience that you need.
Great. Catherine, thank you so much for being gracious enough to join us. This information has been extremely helpful. We've been talking to Catherine Porterfield, who is a consultant in wedding planning. For those of you out there listening who would like to learn more about the profession itself, or if you're interested in finding out how Catherine can help you plan the perfect wedding day, Catherine, how can they go about reaching you?
The best way is email, and that would be CatherinePorterfield@yahoo.com, and that's Catherine, Catherine, Porterfield, PORTERFIELD @yahoo.com.
Great. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you very much.
Take care.
Bye-bye.